Hello and welcome to the Gothic Unicorn. Today we are back in the doll's house in Grandmama's witchy attic workroom, to be precise. Now it's been a while since I've been working on here because I've hit a few snags. So today I'm going to start off with working on the false wall at the back there, and then we're going to attack the fireplace, which hopefully, if I can figure out a way, is going to be lit up. I am starting my false wall with a sheet of foam board. Now I've already cut this down, but it was an A4 sized sheet of foam board, which is about 1/4 of an inch thick, or the equivalent in millimetres. I haven't checked it, but it's what I happen to have, and that's what I'm going to use. Now I've got this to size to fit into the doll's house, and I've now got to do a doorway which will form the basis for the fact that there is more beyond what you can see. Now I'm not going to fit a door. I'm actually going to have a doorway that's going to have a curtain on the inside. So what I need to do is I need to cut my doorway out and take it from there. I have cut the doorway out. Now the doorway is 6 inches high by about 2 3/4 inches wide. Now I know it's not going to meet anybody's building codes, but this is an old house and it's also a doll's house, so trick of the eye is all the thing. But I'm also taking into account the fact that quite often, by the time you got to the higher floors of a house, the attention to detail wasn't there, so doors would be narrower because, well, it was only the servants that went up there. It didn't matter. But it's quite sufficient, and I can fit either side the 2 pieces of furniture that I want to go there, which was my main reasoning behind this. I've also covered the raw edges because, you know, foam board's not very attractive, with some simple copier paper that's just been glued on back and front and along the edges. Once I've added some kind of trim around the door, this won't actually be quite so obvious because I'll paint it in whatever colour I paint the trim, possibly the same colour as I've painted the walls, and it'll just sort of blend in. I have added the wallpaper now, and I had to actually print out 2 lots for this because it was about 1 centimetre too short. Now possibly if I'd played about with my printer's margins, I could have got an image that was just big enough, but it wasn't, so I've had to do a little bit of seaming at this side, but I've done it a bit further in, so I haven't just got a little bit. Now I actually printed this onto 160 GSM cardstock. This is the stuff that I use quite a bit for putting through my printer. It's about as heavyweight as my printer will take, and it's actually a free online download of Doll's House wallpaper. Now I've got to say, it doesn't actually look like this because my printer has got a bit of an issue at the moment. I don't think the ink that's in there is particularly good, and things keep coming out off colour, and this came out off colour, and I liked it. So rather than getting it printed at the proper colour, which was more beigey, I've left it as it is, and that's what I'm going for. So I've done that, and then my next step is going to be to add a door frame, which will allow me to tidy up my mistake there. And I'm using some basswood strip that I'd forgotten I got, that I bought for a previous project quite some time ago, and I was digging around looking for something to use, and I found this and thought, perfect. So I'm going to make a frame, just a very simple door frame. I'm not doing mitered joints or anything like that. I'm just going to do a square joint at the top, because all I'm going to do is paint it. But that's my next step, is to make my frame, and if my frame works, potentially paint at least one edge of it before I put it on, so that I don't get paint all over the wallpaper that I've just so lovingly applied. I have attached my door frame now, and I've also done a little bit of filling in so that the gap where I'd cut the door a little bit crooked isn't so visible. The next step, once the glue sets properly, because I've used some of my glue to fill in the gaps between the frame and the false wall, is going to be to paint the door frame and the inside in the colour that I'm using on the wall, which I'd already used a bit of on the edge of the frame, so I didn't have to cut in at such a small scale. That is a very good idea, I must admit, to have done that first. So next step is some painting, and then I think the basis of this wall is going to be done, and then I'm going to have to start thinking about the curtain that is going to go on the inside of it. So there'll be a curtain back where my hand is, so it looks like there's more rooms beyond this wall. Now I've painted the door frame. I've just used the same paint that I used for the walls of the house. This is just a test pot of household emulsion paint. It was what I could get at the time because we were under restrictions, and it's called Chapel Stone, and I think it's quite a nice colour in relation to this paper, which is why I chose it. Now you might be able to notice that this is currently off the desk. That is because on the other side I've attached some pieces that I used one of the offcuts, cut it in half roughly and glued it on to make stops so that it will sit nicely at the back of the room and stay in the place where I want it to be. Next step is the curtain. To make the curtain, I'm going to use this fabric. Now I have hemmed this using a bit of glue and my iron. It's the easiest way at this scale. You could do a proper sewn hem, but it's not going to be touched, it's not going to be moved once it's in place, so I'm just going with this. Now I know it's not very even either, but I figure once it's all folded and stuck into place, you're not going to know anyway. So my next step is going to be to try and put some pleats into it. Now I have already folded it once and I didn't iron it again, which is why you can probably see it's a bit creased up. But I'm going to fold some creases into it, and then I'm going to see about gluing them in place. I've got a piece of card which I've covered in foil. I've got some pins and I've got lots of glue. I'm going to see what I can do. I have pinned the curtain to my bit of card, and liberal amounts of glue have been applied, and I'm actually still waiting for the glue to dry. Some of it is starting to soak in, but it's going to be quite a while. But hopefully this will set the creases enough, set the pleats enough rather, so that I can actually attach this curtain to the fake wall. So here is my curtain now in situ. I'm pleased with how it looks. I've got some movement in it by the way that I've managed to glue it, so it looks like maybe it's caught on something or something's pushing it forward, but it certainly looks a bit more sort of realistic. I don't know if you can see there that there's a bit of dimension to it. And then I'll just show you the back, and I've basically just glued it down the sides and along the top. Nothing too complicated, but it's going to work in the back of my room. Now the next thing that I need to get sorted in the room is the fireplace. Now obviously I've got the fireplace built. I've had it built for a long time. This was the starting point for this particular room. Now when I built it, I had an idea that I wanted to light it. I want it to look like there's not necessarily a roaring fire, but certainly some glowing embers in the grate. And for a while I had an idea. The problem was I realised this isn't going to work. I realised that there's absolutely no way that easily I can wire this fireplace into the wiring for the house for it to run off mains. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and this is actually what will have slowed this video down, because we've had to come up with a new plan. Now I have got, and I've had for a while, these LEDs. Now if I get this right, I've got a battery here, and if you can see, it is a flickering red light. Just a little bit of a flicker, just enough that it should look good. Now the fact that I can't wire it in means I've had to go for a battery operated option, which means we had to go out, well, go online actually, and try and find some battery holders, and they needed to be switchable. And this was the smallest battery holder we could find with a switch. Now I do have some battery holders that are smaller, but they don't have a switch, and this was necessary because I don't want it left on all the time. I don't want to waste the battery when the house isn't being looked at. So now I've got to try and hide that within the confines of my fireplace, but in such a way that I can actually get to it to turn it on and off. So I have already started on a little modification. As you can see in there, hopefully, I've got my little cauldron hanging. And that was always part of the deal with this, was that there was going to be my little cauldron hanging over the fire. The pole that supports it has to be moved. I've moved that up so that now I have hopefully got enough room to build a little extension below the grate, which will house the battery box. And that's my next step, is I am going to look at building some sides and a front on there so that I can attach this to the bottom. I will then be able to remove it to switch it on and off, and to change the battery when it needs to be. So I'm going to be working on altering my grate. Now what I've got here is my new and improved Firebox. Well, improved, it's not new. And what I've done is I've added a extension of approximately 1/4 of an inch to the bottom. Now the front piece is foam board, foam core, and the two side pieces are just done from double layered food packaging, because it was what I got about, and 2 layers of that actually sort of fairly well equates to a kind of mat board, mount board sort of situation. And then in there we've got the battery pack. Now it's taped in because I haven't glued it in, because I want to be able to actually get it out easier to change the battery. So I've just used a little bit of Scotch tape to just hold it in place. Now I'm going to use this to turn it on because it's easier than trying to get my finger, and turn it over, and you can see we've got a light. Now the light is attached to the wire and is soldered in place. I didn't solder it. My husband was very keen that I should have a go at soldering it, but because I wanted this done this year, I got him to do it, and he just did to be fair, a fairly rudimentary job to just give me what I needed, because it's not going to be seen, so it doesn't need to look particularly pretty. And I'll just turn that back off, and that then, if I get my fireplace, will slide in underneath of the cauldron. So the cauldron can stay in place and that will fit in nicely there. Now I may put a couple of little rails down the side just to keep it in the right place, but it fits, and I'm quite happy about that. Now I am going to add a bit of detailing to the front. I've got some more toothpicks cut down that I'm going to put acrossways to sort of replicate some of the grills and such like that you get on open fires. And then I'm going to work on embers for inside so that it sort of looks a bit more fire-like. So I have finished the work on the firebox. Now as you can see, I've added some more toothpicks to the front, which finishes that off and makes it look like it was always supposed to be like that. And then I've added some embers. Well, I've actually added some coals. I made some little rocks from air dry clay. I painted them black, stuck them in, and then gave them a bit of a dry brushing with some light grey paint. I've also added in a little tiny bit of red glitter glue just to give it a bit of fire when the light is turned off. Then when the light's turned on, it looks like a glowing fire, and I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. And it's now ready to go into the fireplace. Now to finish the fireplace off and to make sure that the firebox doesn't slide too far to the left or right, I fitted in some more toothpicks. I don't know what you'd call those, but you do get bits that stick up on fireplaces, so I thought it wasn't out of place. And I simply made an L shape out of some bits of toothpick and then stuck them down so that when I slide this in and out, it goes in to the correct position. It does go into the correct position when it's flat. So there we have it. Fireplace, fire, ready to go in the room. So here we have it. The false wall and the now lit fireplace are both in place in the room. And I'm liking the look of it. It has to be said that the colour of the wall is not looking great in the light that I'm using. It looks far better in reality, and I have scuffed it putting the fireplace in. It was going to happen, but that can be dealt with in due course. Now I haven't managed as much for this video as I planned, mostly because of my lighting issues, but I'm pleased with what has been achieved, and yeah, I think the room's looking pretty good. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like, comment and subscribe. And until next time, bye!